Hello, how are you doing today? I feel so led, like we would always say, to encourage someone today. I'm sure there's someone who's watching this, who's going through a phase in life where everything seems like dark. I know we hear a lot of weeping comes in the night, but joy comes in the morning. But there are times we sit back at our lives, we look around us, it's like there's no joy anywhere. We get to a point in our lives, like the Bible says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. Our hearts are just heavy and sick. I'd like to share with you a personal experience of where I can say authoritatively there's the grace of God that works in the lives of men. I grew up in a dysfunctional home where my mother and my father had issues, and as a teenage girl, I'd watch certain things go on at home, and it affected me to the point that I had to repeat my third form in school. I remember when that happened and I repeated my third form, it was like my whole life had crashed, because my mates at that time had moved on now to a higher class, and those who were my junior before were now my mates in class. But as I went through that phase, they were never really my mates, because I didn't exactly belong to them, and I didn't belong to those who had left ahead of me. And so one way or the other, I drifted through secondary school. And because of that experience, for every time as I grew in life, I didn't want to have anything to do with old girls of my secondary school. And then one day, about 4 years ago, a very good friend of mine, Debola, called me and said to me that I needed to begin to associate with the old girls, now talking about the people I'd repeated classes with. Initially, I had my reservations. I was a bit withdrawn. I didn't want to do that. But she kept prompting me, Bisi, come for the meeting. It's not as bad as you think. And then I joined the meeting, and it wasn't as bad as I'd expected. Fast forward 2 years later, the school, the old girls, that is the mates, my mates then, were having 35 years out of school. And they needed just 2 of us to speak to the other girls now. That's the present students in my secondary school, to talk to them on different topics. And so they picked me to talk to them about self-esteem. And I did that, and I remember very well they had the vice principal and a couple of other staff. And I remember as I took them through my journey in my secondary school days, a lot of the girls there present could relate. There were many of them who were having issues at home, dysfunctional homes. There were so many of them who had low self-esteem, and it was affecting them academically. And I shared my life story and how I'd gone through life and where God had brought me through. And as I stood there talking that day, I watched some of my mates in secondary school then who were at that meeting look at me differently. They had, I would say, some kind of respect for me, because at that point they probably didn't know what I was going through. And so listening to me and then looking at me and seeing where God had brought me to, probably said to them that God had done me good. But that's not the end of the story. A few months after that, I got a phone call from the vice principal of my school. And she said to me that they were having their valedictory service. And guess what? They needed me to come and talk to the valedictorians. And I was like, me, Bisi, come and do that. And so that day, all dressed up, I went, and I'm there. The principal is there, the vice principal is there, the board of trustees, so many people are there. And I stood there and I talked. I shared experiences. I inspired those who were leaving, and also talked to the parents as well. But guess what? As that happened, when I was going to the podium and this was happening, they didn't introduce me as Bisi Meadows. That's my maiden name there. They didn't introduce me as Bisi Meadows, the failure, the one who had repeated, the one who was ashamed. What I heard now was, would like to introduce to you Mrs. Bisi Ibitayo, a former student of this school, who is now a public speaker, a minister of the gospel, one who is doing this school proud. As I sat there, I had to look around me twice. I'm like, are they talking about me, Bisi, who went through that phase of my life? Why have I shared this with you? The Bible talks about God giving you double for your shame. It doesn't matter what you have been through in life or what you're going through right now. There's a God in heaven who is able to make you go through a phase in life, and it brings honor out of that situation you've gone through. You don't believe me? In the Bible, in the book of Isaiah chapter 61, verse 7, Isaiah 61, verse 7, the Bible says in the New Living Translation, it says, instead of shame and dishonor, you will enjoy a double share of honor. It says you will possess a double portion of prosperity in your land, and everlasting joy will be yours. What are you going through? You think life is not happening for you. You believe that that shame you've gone through is where your story is going to end. There's still a God who qualifies a man by grace. Read the story of Esther, read the story of Joseph, read the stories of people in the Bible, and you'll just be amazed that there's a God who gives double for every shame you've gone through. My story didn't end at my repeating my thought form in school. The story, as far as God was concerned, still had a continuation where I was going to stand to inspire other people with the story of the failure I've had in my past. God has not forgotten you yet. He has you graven in the palm of his hands. He's still going to make you go back to that place of shame to receive a shine and an applause from the people who have ridiculed you before. Don't give up on God. My name is Bisi Ibitayo, and I hope this has inspired you, because I'm saved to inspire.